At exactly 5:09 a.m. on June 6, 1944, Major Werner Pluskat lifted a field telephone with a shaking hand and spoke 6 words that should have changed everything. "There must be 10,000 ships out there." The voice on the other end paused, then laughed. "Get hold of yourself, Pluskat. The Americans and the British don't have 10,000 ships. Nobody has 10,000 ships." Pluskat said nothing. He was staring at the horizon through fractured concrete, watching the largest invasion force in human history materialize from morning fog like a vision of mechanical apocalypse. Every gun under his command was about to open fire on a beach that would be renamed in blood. But here's what makes this story different from every D-Day story you know. For exactly 4 hours and 9 minutes before the first soldier touched sand, one German officer knew it was coming and couldn't stop it. Werner Pluskat commanded the 352nd Infantry Division's coastal artillery at a sector the Allies had codenamed Omaha Beach. His job was simple. If ships appeared, sink them. If soldiers landed, kill them on the sand. If they broke through, the road to Paris was open. He had 12 artillery pieces. The Atlantic Wall, Hitler's fortress Europe, depended on men like him to make the beach a graveyard. But on the night of June 5th, something was wrong. Not wrong like intelligence reports or troop movements, wrong in a way that made experienced soldiers check their weapons twice. At 1 a.m., his regimental commander called. "Anything?" Pluskat scanned the darkness. Waves, fog, nothing. "Nothing, sir." He hung up and returned to the observation slit. Below him, the beach bristled with obstacles, steel hedgehogs, Belgian gates, mines buried in tidal sand. His guns were loaded, his crews were ready. Everything was prepared, but the waiting felt different tonight. Then, at 2 a.m., the sound started. Low, mechanical, rolling across the water like distant thunder that wouldn't stop. Pluskat pressed against the concrete, listening. The sound grew and grew until it became a roar. Aircraft engines, hundreds of them. He rushed to the observation slit and looked north. The sky tore open in streaks of light. Parachutes bloomed against darkness, thousands of white flowers falling onto French earth. Alarm! His artillery crews scrambled. The phone rang again. The voice was sharp now. "What do you see?" "Paratroopers, massive drop, inland." "Turn your guns. My orders are the beach, always the beach." But the invasion was already behind him. The question that should have been asked, why would paratroopers drop 4 hours before a beach landing? Between 2 a.m. and dawn, Werner Pluskat existed in a unique psychological space that no training could prepare him for. He could hear the invasion happening. He could hear bridges being seized, roads being cut, the sound of distant gunfire spreading like infection through the Bocage countryside behind him. But he could see nothing. His guns faced the ocean. His orders were absolute. The Atlantic Wall doctrine was designed around a single principle: stop them on the beach. Everything else was secondary. The paratroopers were a problem for inland divisions. His mission remained unchanged. So he waited, listening to the war start without him. At 3:30 a.m., the aircraft sounds faded. Silence returned, heavier than before. His gun crew stood at their positions, ammunition stacked, waiting for targets that hadn't appeared. Some of them were smoking. One was writing a letter by candlelight. Pluskat checked his watch every few minutes. Each time, less time had passed than he thought. At 4:15 a.m., he called regiment himself. Status: confused. Drops reported across Normandy. Some kind of dummies involved. We're trying to determine the main effort. And the beach? Nothing. Stay alert. He stayed alert. What else could he do? Dawn came slowly on June 6th, not like a sunrise, more like a gradual leak of gray light into black water, the kind of dawn that reveals things piece by piece, never all at once. At 5:05 a.m., Pluskat returned to his scope. The fog was lifting. He scanned left to right, the same motion he'd performed 1,000 times during 1,000 empty watches. Then he stopped. There was something on the horizon, a shape. He adjusted the scope. Not one shape, many shapes. Dozens became hundreds. Hundreds became something he didn't have words for. His hands started shaking. He gripped the scope harder, forcing his eyes to accept what they were seeing. The entire horizon, from his leftmost field of view to his rightmost field of view, was ships. Not a fleet, not an armada, a rewriting of what the word invasion could mean. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, transports, arranged in neat rows extending to infinity. The ocean had been replaced with steel. He reached for the phone. His hand was shaking so badly he dropped it. He picked it up, dialed, waited. Report. Ships, Pluskat said. What kind of ships? How many? Pluskat looked at the horizon again. The shapes were clearer now. More were appearing as the light improved. His mind tried to count and failed. 10,000, he said. There must be 10,000 ships out there. The voice on the other end laughed. Let's pause here and understand what Pluskat was actually seeing. Operation Neptune, the naval component of D-Day, involved 6,939 vessels. Not 10,000, but enough that his estimate was closer to truth than his commander's disbelief. This included 1,213 warships and 4,126 landing craft. The supporting fleet stretched across 50 miles of English Channel. The Allied plan had achieved something unprecedented. They'd assembled the largest amphibious invasion in history and kept it secret until the morning it arrived. But here's the part that matters. Pluskat wasn't looking at ships. He was looking at the materialization of industrial warfare at a scale Germany couldn't match. Every vessel out there represented a supply chain, a factory system, a petroleum economy that was about to express itself through high explosives. The Atlantic Wall was designed to stop an invasion. What Pluskat was watching was an invasion announcement. The Allies weren't sneaking onto the beach. They were parking an armada in plain sight and daring Germany to stop them. His commander was still talking. Pluskat, get hold of yourself. Where are these ships? Everywhere, across the entire horizon. What direction are they heading? Pluskat looked through the scope again. The ships weren't moving. They were stationary, just sitting there. Sitting there? That makes no sense. The world exploded. The first naval bombardment salvo sounded like the air itself was tearing. The shells passed overhead with a freight train scream that arrived a split second before impact. The bluffs around Pluskat's position erupted in geysers of earth and pulverized concrete. The bunker shuddered. Dust filled his lungs. The lights went out. "Fire!" he screamed into darkness. "Fire!" His gun crews needed no orders. They'd been waiting 6 hours for permission to do something. The 155mm artillery pieces roared, sending shells arcing toward the distant fleet. Here's what it sounded like inside a German bunker during the naval bombardment. Continuous thunder. Not thunder that rolls and fades, thunder that overlaps with itself, each impact triggering before the last one finishes, creating a sound that stops being individual explosions and becomes a pressure change in reality.
Pluskat's 12 guns were firing as fast as crews could load them, maybe one shot every 90 seconds per gun. Call it 400 rounds per hour at maximum rate. The Allied fleet was firing approximately 100,000 shells in the first hour. The mathematics of the situation were simple. Pluskat was in a concrete box, defending a beach against an enemy that could afford to turn the entire coastline into cratered moonscape just to make sure. One of his forward observers called in, "Direct hit on gun position 4. 11 guns remaining. The naval fire was adjusting. It wasn't random anymore. Someone was feeding coordinates from spotting aircraft, from ships offshore, from 1,000 eyes that Pluskat couldn't see. The impacts were walking up the bluff, getting closer with frightening precision. At 6:30 a.m., the landing craft appeared. Pluskat saw them through gaps in the smoke, dark shapes emerging from the fleet, churning toward shore in organized waves. Hundreds of them. The water boiled with mechanical movement. Zielfeuer! Target fire! His remaining guns shifted, tracking the approaching craft. At 2,000 meters, they opened fire. The first shell missed. The second hit a landing craft dead center and erased it in a ball of orange flame. Debris rained across the water. The other craft kept coming. Reload! Faster! His crews were moving at maximum speed, shells weighing 95 pounds each, loaded by exhausted men in a concrete box being hammered by naval guns. They were doing everything right. It wasn't enough. For every landing craft Pluskat destroyed, 10 more pushed through. The mathematics had shifted from artillery calculus to industrial inevitability. The Allies weren't trying to avoid casualties, they were accepting casualties as the cost of delivering soldiers onto sand. At 6:50 a.m., the landing ramps dropped. Pluskat watched through his scope as American soldiers poured into chest-deep water. The MG-42 machine gun positions dug into the bluffs opened fire immediately. The distinctive ripping sound, 1,200 rounds per minute, echoed across the beach. Tracers raked the waterline. Men fell. Others pressed forward. The surf churned red. Yet they kept coming. More landing craft, more soldiers, tanks pushing through obstacles, some bogging down immediately in soft sand, others crawling toward the shingle. Engineers sprinting with explosive charges, trying to cut lanes through the Belgian gates and hedgehogs. Pluskat's guns fired into the chaos. Each shell created a crater, destroyed equipment, killed men. But the beach was so crowded now that missing was nearly impossible. Every shot hit something. Gun position 7 destroyed. 10 guns. The Americans were now pinned behind the seawall. Bodies lined the waterline. Burning vehicles marked the high tide line. From Pluskat's position, it looked like the invasion had failed. The beach was a killing ground. The Atlantic Wall was working. But the landing craft kept coming. Wave after wave. The Allies were feeding soldiers into a meat grinder and not stopping. Pluskat had studied amphibious assault theory. He knew the doctrine. If the initial waves fail, you withdraw, regroup, try a different beach. The Americans weren't withdrawing. At 7:30 a.m., his ammunition officer appeared. How many shells remaining? At current rate, 30 minutes. Pluskat looked at the beach. It was covered with Americans, thousands of them, pinned down, yes, taking casualties, yes, but there, on the beach, establishing a foothold. He called regiment. We need resupply, urgently. Static. Then, the roads are cut, the paratroopers, we can't get through. Then what do we... A naval shell hit his bunker directly. The sound of reinforced concrete failing is specific. It's not a crack, It's a deep groan, like a ship's hull taking water. Pluskat's bunker made that sound at 7:47 a.m., and he understood immediately that the structure was giving up. His observation scope shattered. The view disappeared into fractured glass and concrete dust. He hit the floor hard, tasting blood and burnt powder. When he lifted his head, smoke was seeping through a fresh crack in the wall. Not a hairline fracture, but a wound in the fortress itself. The Atlantic wall was bleeding. 2 guns left, fewer than 40 shells remaining. The mathematics had become personal now. Pluskat could calculate exactly how long he had left to matter. At current firing rate, 18 minutes. Then he would transition from defender of Fortress Europe to man in a concrete box waiting to die. Outside, the tenor of the bombardment changed. Less noise, more precision. The spotters had refined their targeting. Impacts marched up the bluff with frightening accuracy, each one closer than the last. At 8 a.m., something shifted on the beach. Small groups of Americans began moving up from the seawall, not the mass charges that machine guns could cut down, careful, coordinated movements through the draws and gullies in the bluff. Fire forced some to drop, others reached cover and kept pushing. They were using grenades and satchel charges on each strong point, systematic, professional, the kind of combat engineering that only happens when soldiers have trained for this exact beach, this exact obstacle, this exact mission. Pluskat's radio crackled with fragmentary reports. MG position 12 overrun. Infantry in the draws. They're behind us. Then silence. He grabbed the phone. Regiment, I need permission to fall back. The voice that answered was different, younger. Major Pluskat? Where's the colonel? Wounded, sir. Command post took a direct hit. I need withdrawal authorization. My position is untenable. Sir, there's nowhere to withdraw to. The roads are cut. The paratroopers control the crossroads. We're surrounded. Pluskat said nothing. He was trying to process the tactical situation and failing. Surrounded, on D-Day, in the first 8 hours. The doctrine said this was impossible. The Atlantic Wall was designed with defense in depth, multiple fallback positions, interior lines of communication. You couldn't be surrounded when you owned the entire continent behind you. But the paratroopers had dropped at 2 a.m. While Pluskat was watching an empty ocean. They'd been seizing the internal architecture of the German defense, the roads, the bridges, the communications nodes that would have allowed reinforcement and retreat. The invasion hadn't started on the beach. It had started behind the beach. The naval armada was the second act, not the first. Pluskat was beginning to understand that he'd been watching the wrong thing at the wrong time all night. Sir, the young voice on the phone, what are your orders? What were his orders? Fight until ammunition ran out, then fight with rifles, then fight with grenades, then die in a concrete box that had been sold as impregnable but was already crumbling. Hold position, Pluskat said. Fight until... The phone went dead, not disconnected, destroyed. He could hear it in the quality of the silence. A shell had hit the communication line. He was alone now, cut off from command, cut off from resupply, cut off from the war, except for the small piece of it he could see through the smoke. At 8:45 a.m., his last 2 guns fell silent, out of ammunition. Pluskat stood in the observation slit and watched the beach transform. The killing ground was becoming a foothold. Engineers were blowing gaps in the obstacles. Tanks were crawling up the slopes. Medics were working in the open now, German and American wounded lying side by side in the sand while the battle moved inland around them. The scale was stunning. Not the scale of death, though that was immense. The scale of arrival, vehicles and supplies in continuous stream. The Allies had turned the ocean into a highway, and they were driving an army across it. The Atlantic Wall hadn't failed. It had been irrelevant. Pluskat thought about the 4 years of construction, the millions of tons of concrete, the slave labor, the propaganda about Fortress Europe, all of it predicated on the simple idea, make the beach too expensive to take. But the Allies hadn't tried to take the beach cheaply. They'd simply accepted the cost and paid it. They'd looked at the Atlantic Wall and calculated that they could afford more shells, more ships, more soldiers than Germany could afford concrete. They'd been right. Somewhere in the bunker, someone was crying. Pluskat didn't know who. Maybe one of the ammunition runners, maybe one of the gun crews, young men who believed that the guns and the concrete would protect them. The bunker shuddered again. Another near miss. Dust fell from the ceiling like snow.
Pluskat checked his pistol. 15 rounds. He thought about the tactical manual's instructions for bunker defense after ammunition depletion. It involved phrases like close quarters combat and fighting withdrawal that sounded professional on paper, but meant dying in a concrete box. He looked at the beach again. The Americans were everywhere now. Not scattered, organized. Unit flags were visible, command posts being established. The chaos of the morning was resolving into something that looked like an army. At the base of the bluff, a group of American soldiers had captured a German machine gun nest. Pluskat watched them through the smoke. 4 men securing the position, checking for wounded, setting up a defensive perimeter. Professional. Exhausted, alive. One of them looked up toward Pluskat's bunker. For a moment, their eyes met across 300 meters of cratered earth. The American raised his rifle, then lowered it. There was no target worth the ammunition. The bunker was already dead. Pluskat stepped back from the observation slit. His men were gathering now, looking at him, waiting for orders. They were artillery crew, trained to fire guns that no longer had ammunition. Their entire purpose had evaporated. What does a soldier do when his weapon runs dry and the enemy is still coming? "Prepare to evacuate," Pluskat said quietly. Someone started to object. Pluskat cut them off. "The mission is complete. We held as long as we could. Now we survive." They began gathering personal items, destroying documents, preparing for a retreat that had nowhere to go. Pluskat watched them move through the smoke-filled bunker and thought about the mathematics again. He'd commanded 12 guns, fired approximately 2,000 shells, killed, what, hundreds of Americans? Maybe thousands, if you counted all the positions his guns had supported? And it had changed nothing. The Allies had landed 156,000 soldiers on D-Day, lost approximately 4,000 killed across all beaches. Omaha was the bloodiest, 2,400 American casualties, and it was still a success. The Atlantic Wall had been designed to make invasion impossible. Instead, it had made invasion expensive, and the Allies had simply paid the price. At 9:20 a.m., Pluskat led his remaining men out of the bunker through a service tunnel. The morning light was harsh after hours in concrete darkness. The sound of naval guns was more distant now. The fire was moving inland, following the advance. Behind them, the bunker took another direct hit. The structure that had been sold as impregnable collapsed in a cloud of dust and broken concrete. Pluskat didn't look back. He was already trying to figure out how to navigate roads that were cut, through countryside held by paratroopers, back to a German line that might not exist anymore. The 352nd Infantry Division would suffer catastrophic casualties defending Omaha Beach. Over 1,200 men killed, wounded, or captured in the first 12 hours.
The division would effectively cease to exist as a fighting force. But Werner Pluskat would survive. Here's what history doesn't tell you about Werner Pluskat. After the war, his account of D-Day appeared in Cornelius Ryan's The Longest Day. The story you've been hearing, the 10,000 ships, the dawn revelation, the desperate defense, became one of the most famous German perspectives on the invasion. Historians loved it. It had drama, it had the moment, it had the poetic image of a lone German officer staring at the horizon, saying something that captured the immensity of what was coming. 10,000 ships does that. It's poetic, it's visual, it's wrong, but it's the right kind of wrong for storytelling. So what actually happened in that bunker? We don't know. We know there was artillery fire. We know there was a bombardment. We know German positions were overrun and ammunition ran short. But the minute-by-minute psychological thriller we've been experiencing, that might be historical fiction dressed as testimony. This destabilizes everything, doesn't it? If Pluskat's account is unreliable, then every emotional beat, every calculation, every moment of realization might be fabrication. We've been inside the head of a character who might be partially fictional. But here's the deeper question. Does that make the story less true? Because even if Pluskat didn't experience it exactly this way, someone did. Multiple someones. German officers did watch that fleet appear. They did fight with dwindling ammunition. They did calculate the mathematics of industrial warfare and come up short. The emotional truth of the story, the experience of defending a position against overwhelming force, the gradual realization of defeat, the psychological weight of watching an invasion you can't stop, that's historically accurate, even if the specific timeline isn't. History is full of these composite characters, the soldier who represents thousands of soldiers, the moment that crystallizes months of experience, the quote that nobody quite said, but everyone remembers. Pluskat became famous because his story did something most historical accounts don't. It gave us permission to inhabit the losing side, to understand that from inside the bunker, defending the Atlantic Wall felt rational, that German soldiers weren't cartoon villains, they were men with guns and orders, doing mathematics and losing. That's valuable, even if it's partly invented. But it means we've been watching a historical Rorschach test. You saw what you needed to see, maybe a tragedy, maybe a cautionary tale about industrial warfare, maybe a story about the limits of concrete and courage. What actually happened in that bunker? Artillery fired until ammunition ran out. Men fought and died. The invasion succeeded. Everything else, the phone calls, the exact moments, the crushing psychological realization, that's reconstruction, memory, story. The kind of truth that's more important than facts and less reliable than myth. Werner Pluskat maintained until his death in 1996 that the sight of the Allied Armada at dawn was the moment he knew Germany had lost the war. Did he see it that morning or realize it years later when remembering? Does it matter? There's a photograph that doesn't exist. Nobody took a picture of what Werner Pluskat saw through his observation scope at dawn on June 6, 1944. The bunker was under bombardment, film was scarce, and even if someone had captured the view, it wouldn't show what mattered. Because what Pluskat saw, whether at 5:09 a.m. or some other time, whether he reported it accurately or reconstructed it later, wasn't just ships. It was the future arriving early. The future where Germany lost, where the Atlantic Wall failed, where concrete fortresses became tombs and industrial capacity mattered more than courage. That future was always coming. It had been coming since 1941, since the invasion of the Soviet Union, since Pearl Harbor, since every strategic decision that locked Germany into a war it couldn't win. But futures arrive slowly, day by day, battle by battle, strategic defeat by strategic defeat. You can rationalize each individual loss, bad luck, bad weather, bad intelligence, until one morning you look at the horizon and see 10,000 ships, and you realize the future has already happened. You've been living in it for hours, maybe months, maybe years. You just didn't know until you saw it all at once. That's what Pluskat gave us, whether he meant to or not, whether he remembered it accurately or not. The moment when the story you've been telling yourself stops working. When the math becomes unavoidable. When history stops being something you're making and becomes something happening to you. Omaha Beach was Germany's most successful defensive stand on D-Day. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Pluskat knew it at dawn. Or maybe he knew it years later, looking back. What's the difference?